Chapter 4. Festival Day. For all Cordetta's disdain for the Guildmerite well-to-do, she had to admit they at least had better manners than Heath. Also, they sold her nice things instead of robbing her. Why, within a mere half hour she had a smocked white peasant shirt with a matching linen skirt that would do nicely for the hot engine room, and if that weren't enough, she found an elegant red dress with a full skirt, the kind she had seen the Inventors Guild ladies wear in a few illustrations, and a few nice things for Heath. There was a salon, too, that looked tempting, but she didn't want to leave Heath alone on the ship for too long. He might try to steal her gadgets, and she'd made too much progress with them during the voyage to let any skullduggery befall them. Besides, she'd be letting the best things in life pass her by if she left him back there. Apparently, some sort of romantic festival was going on in Guildmere, the Rose and Dahlia Festival. Romantic couples of every degree got discounts as long as both of them were present, while anyone going out alone got pitying looks, and that was if they were lucky. Cordetta got more than one offer from perfect strangers to go on blind dates with one or another of their acquaintances. Her protest that she had a sweetheart, here she was thinking of Heath, something she discovered to her great chagrin, seemed to dovetail perfectly with the traditional response on this holiday, and so she was not to be believed in the slightest. "Well, of course you do, honey," some sweet old dear told her, "but I'm sure my boy Busille is twice the man he is. He's head chef at the 2 Lakes. 6 o'clock? 6 o'clock. Cordetta wasn't sure how she'd managed to land herself in this situation, never mind being shanghaied into a date by a wizened old grandma. She'd been winkled out of her own, well, her sister's own, boat by an uncultured ruffian whom she now suspected of a thoroughly criminal past. The best that could be said about him was he didn't seem to be a threat to her, just everyone else. He was rude and domineering and would take from her anything she did not resolutely defend. What Cordetta was sure of, however, was that this would not come between her and her admission to the Inventors Guild. It was, at worst, a detour, she hoped. When she returned to the ship, Heath had indeed touched her gadgets, but only to package them up carefully and store them, along with her moonjade, inside the seepstone-lined box. Then he'd put that inside a false bottom compartment in the pantry. He showed her where. He also assured her he had no intention of disturbing them further. That done, he faced her with his hands nervously clasped behind his back and haltingly cleared his throat. Cordetta smelled a rat. Heath cleared his throat again. "Cordetta, I think we'd both be better off if we started helping each other." Cordetta was taken aback by his directness, but she rallied. "I thought we'd get to this eventually," she told him. "So let's be frank. You want to be able to do whatever it is you plan to do without worrying that I'm going to take back my ship and get on with my goals." Heath sighed heavily and nodded. "I have a proposition." Cordetta raised her eyebrows and tried to look as unimpressed as possible. "Is it a promise not to rat me out? Because you're going to have to do better than that." "It's a promise of moonjade," Heath said. "You like moonjade, don't you? You bought all of it in Lintown." Cordetta could hardly deny it. There was never enough of it, especially not in quality, for the gadgets she wanted to build. She nodded. "Where I'm headed, there's going to be more. A lot more." "Where? And don't try to tell me it's a secret." "It's no secret, Princess. Ask anyone in town. It's the Seep." The Seep? Cordetta was sure she'd read something along those lines. The Seep was a nasty corruption spreading in every part of Lorcia. Every settlement had at least one nearby growth. Others had been overrun entirely by its degeneration. No attempt to reverse its spread had ever succeeded. However, areas taken by the Seep were also known to be pretty devoid of life, not exactly a place to go treasure hunting. "Oh. That still leaves the question of why I need you, then. The Seep isn't exactly hard to find." Heath stared at her, seemingly lost for words. Cordetta sensed she'd again revealed a gap in her knowledge. "Oh no, the moonjade finds you," Heath answered finally and somewhat smugly. In response to Cordetta's confused look, he added, "What on earth were your royal tutors teaching you? Tell you what, let's put a pin in that and go into town. You said you bought a bunch of fancy clothes for the Rose and Dahlia Festival? Then let's put them on, and I'll play your loyal footman at the Guildmere Market." Cordetta was almost touched. "Oh, to protect me?" "Yes, exactly," Heath said. "To protect you from spending money we don't have. A royal yacht does not give us a royal budget." "Maybe if you'd stolen anything we could sell," Cordetta simpered. "All that stuff instead of just taking the silverware like a normal thief. Some of Mother's goblets. We could have at least—" "Okay, I get it. Maybe a necklace or a tiara? Something with diamonds at any rate." "Okay." Getting Heath into fine clothes was both easier and harder than she'd expected. She'd gotten him a broad-brimmed, high-crowned hat with a large feather most likely plucked from some sea creature. He liked that well enough, but expressed great skepticism at the long coat. Its embroidery and large sleeve cuffs struck him as more posture than anything else. and a great deal of persuasion was needed to bring him to the position that they lent him a considerable air of gravitas. And, of course, he had absolutely refused the studded belt until he'd found a way to modify it to accommodate his scabbard the way his other belt did. "It's a festival, Heath," Cordetta groaned. "No one's going to be attacking anyone." Heath tipped his cavalier hat and bowed. "Spoken like a true princess," he declared. Then, under his breath, he added, "who's always had someone else to watch her back." On their way down the gangplank, Cordetta slipped her arm through Heath's like a snake that fed exclusively on discounts. Heath flashed her a confused look, but of course a princess of Ellenvale had no need to explain herself. "Greetings and welcome to Guildmere, good sir and lady," a well-dressed official in a powdered gray wig said as soon as they left the dock. "Come to partake in the Rose and Dahlia Festival?" "We've never felt so in love," Cordetta gushed. Heath shot her another look, but she trod on his foot and twirled a strand of her auburn hair on her finger. Then she laid her head on his shoulder. "Lovely, lovely," the courtier said. "Is that an Ellenvale accent I detect?" Heath grunted and squeezed Cordetta. "No," he answered, smiling with more teeth than cheer. "You must be mistaken." Though Heath's accent was lightly provincial, the courtier looked unconvinced given Cordetta's very Ellenvale accent. "Have you ever met an Ellenvaler?" "Oh, yes," the courtier replied, nodding hard enough to shake powder loose from his wig. Cordetta mused that gray wigs had been out of style even before the coming of the quiet one. "The Duke of Marindale maintains the Ellenvale embassy at his palazzo. Should you have any need of his office?" He glanced significantly at Cordetta. Heath slung his arm heavily along Cordetta's shoulders and rushed her past the man. Cordetta hoped the Duke wouldn't become a problem later. She hadn't seen him in over 10 years. Might he recognize her? Had the courtier? "Okay, Cordetta," Heath said once they were out of earshot. "If that's our cover story, we need to at least act like we like each other." "I was thinking the same thing," Cordetta agreed, "but not just like we like each other." "Oh, no?" Heath took an involuntary step backwards. "Oh, honey," Cordetta cooed, stepping forward to rearrange his shirt collar. "Don't you know we're married?" "Is that really necessary?" Out of the corner of her eye, Cordetta spied a woman walking by herself, catching looks alternatively pitying and acquisitive. "Absolutely." Heath fumbled his collar back into its previous configuration. "Fine, honey." The festival had progressed in the time Cordetta had been away. Decorations had gone up along every major street, pink and green ribbons were tacked to every roof, and ornately tied knots of rope hung from every store sign. People, well, couples, thronged the streets, poor and rich alike, carrying flowers and feeding each other pink or green sweets. Cordetta strolled arm in arm with Heath, drinking in every moment of it, and not even the long, thin shadows of the merchant towers could darken her day. Even Heath seemed to be enjoying himself as he scanned the stalls they passed. Whatever he was looking for, he found it a block later. "Okay, time to pull that pin back out. What was it you wanted to know about the seep?" he asked, stopping suddenly and leaning casually against a lamppost. They were passing by a butcher advertising rare meats at his stall along with the mandatory sweets. Cordetta squinted at him. "You know what?" "Who, me?" Heath said. He leaned in and whispered raspily. "But I'm just a common pirate. Surely I could never fathom the mechanical mind of my brilliant princess wife." Cordetta groaned. "Why, I need you to enter the seep when I could just invent something to counteract its effects." She started counting on her fingers. "What is it that's so inherently dangerous, since everyone knows the butchery of the seep saints keeps the monsters confined to only the deepest regions? What you meant about the moonjade finding me?" Heath sucked in his breath theatrically and blew it slowly out, somehow more disbelievingly than before. Cordetta sensed she was being mocked, but Heath wasn't the only one. The butcher stopped his chopping in order to blink slowly at her as if unsure she was real. Even a trio of teenage girls selling pink and green flowers and sweets nearby exchanged glances while whispering incredulously in each other's ears. "You really are sheltered, aren't you?" "Honey," Heath remarked. "Tell you what, let's do this. Butcher, good sir, have you any bacon?" "Of course," the butcher replied. "I'll take a pound then." Heath flipped the butcher a coin. "Now, how about some ground shoulder of Halmagorn?" The butcher snorted as he hauled a slab of bacon onto the counter. "Been 10 years since anyone in Guildmere had that," he answered pleasantly as he chopped away. "And why's that?" Heath asked with zero apparent curiosity. "Because their claws are longer than this knife, and almost as sharp." The butcher held up his carving knife, then returned to his cleaver. "No one's going to the seep to hunt one, and Halmagorns only leave it when someone's been careless about storing their moonjade." "Oh, right, because they have an insatiable appetite for the stuff," Heath said. "Of course, that makes sense. What's the biggest seep fiend you've got? My wife Cordetta here's got a ravenous curiosity about all things seep." "Does she? Well, funny you should ask. I have this little thing right here. The butcher reached under the counter and lifted a small cage into view. I've been trying to fatten it up on scraps, but it only takes oxtail. 4 guilders? Inside the cage was an odd little critter. The size of an average dog, it had long, fuzzy legs and a thin, flexible body. It was striped in black and white rings from the long, twitching tail to the round, short-snouted head, from which big orange eyes, rimmed with black fur, peered out between the sturdy cage slats. They flicked curiously and a little sadly between Heath and Cordetta, as though bracing for one of them to reach in and poke its little pink nose. Wild animal or no, Cordetta had to admit she was tempted. Close to its chest, in small, nimble paws, it held a small tailbone vertebra, one which already bore a score of deeply etched teeth marks. Heath leaned up against the cage and gave the critter a good look. Then he and Cordetta exchanged slightly skeptical glances. 4? How about 3? Heath slipped an arm around Cordetta. She knew he was only asking for the couple's discount, but she couldn't help feeling a little safer having it there. The butcher grunted, then shrugged. Cordetta, did you say? The butcher said to Heath as he paid, eyes darting toward Cordetta, like the Ellenvale princess. A princess? Cordetta scoffed. Do I look like a princess to you? The butcher favored her with his winningest smile. All paying customers look like princesses to me. The effect might have worked better if he hadn't picked the cleaver back up. Has he been fed today? Cordetta asked. Is it a him? Girl critter. Sure, she's been fed. Probably. No returns, by the way. So what is she? She asked as Heath carried the cage down the street. He stopped and lifted it up for her to examine. That's a platy, Heath told her. Mean little things, but they've at least got some meat on them. That struck Cordetta as an odd thing to say about one's new pet. So that's what they look like, she said. I suppose we'll need a bunch of oxtails then. Heath held his hand up in a teetering motion. Well, won't we? Cordetta pressed. Don't worry, it'll be feeding for dinner. Cordetta took a moment, but it clicked. She's feeding us? Cordetta said. She is dinner? Heath nodded and shot her a smirk. We'll butcher it ourselves, fry it up tonight in its own fat. Of course, there's not a lot of fat on it, but we can air dry the rest for jerky. Should last us a good while. What? Cordetta said. Heath, what? Don't like fried meat? Or jerky? She's cute. I like her. The platy's big eyes reminded her of a doll she treasured as a little girl. Cordetta, if you can't stand to kill this thing, then you really need me in the seep. Cordetta pointed her finger in his face. The platy's eyes followed the movement, blinking slowly and, it seemed to Cordetta, pathetically. Heath, we are not killing this poor creature. Heath leaned in, blew on her finger, and smirked again. So, his smile turned her stomach only slightly less than the thought of having to kill something cute. Okay, Cordetta conceded. Maybe I need you for the seep. The look of satisfaction on Heath's face was unbearable. Cordetta stewed as Heath waved to a pair of boys in the crowd and beckoned them over with a copper. He set the cage down for them, gave them instructions, and they picked up the cage at opposite ends and set off for the docks. So what do you want to buy next? Heath asked. With our couple's discount. Actually, I don't want to buy anything. I don't believe you. He was right not to. Cordetta wanted to buy many things, but Heath couldn't be allowed the gratification of helping her with anything right now. I've never been to Guildmere before. I want to walk around and take in the sights. Fine, then I want to do some shopping. Lots of provisions to buy, Heath said. This shindig doesn't really start to liven up until after 6 anyway. Oh, speaking of 6, Cordetta started before realizing she wasn't sure what she wanted to do about the date thing. No, nothing. Never mind. Heath had a long list of things already drawn up. The multiple barrels of seepstone were the least of it. They apparently needed lots of oil and butter, as well as quantities of vegetables Cordetta hadn't realized one could purchase in a single go. Flour, too, which apparently came in bags? She had always just gotten it out of the ceramic jars in the palace kitchen on the rare occasion she felt like making a batch of cookies. Cordetta suddenly had the horrible suspicion Heath was enjoying this discount thing more than she was. Oh, and another thing, Heath, dear, she said, scanning the list again. Heath looked up warily from a barrel of lentils he had been appraising. This list? Potatoes, raisins, plain oats, dried beans. It's horse food, and I'm tired of it, and I'm not putting up with it any longer. Cordetta missed multi-course meals with sauces and her standard breakfast of freshly cut produce from the palace greenhouses. They'd been eating plain bread and potatoes with a bit of plain cheese every meal since leaving Ellenvale. Heath didn't seem to have a problem with it, but then he'd probably stuffed his face with all of Rosalie's treats. Cordetta had searched high and low for those chocolate-top petite beurre multiple times. She'd planned on rationing them one a night over the course of an entire month. Heath had probably chipmunked his cheeks with them the moment he clapped eyes on them. She glared at him, picturing his cheeks billowing as though at that very moment. Okay, we'll add some smoked sausage links, Heath replied. No, that's dog food. I'm talking about something tasty. They've got some lucky animals in Ellenvale, Heath muttered. Don't change the subject. I have higher standards than this, and we are going to find someone who sells something with actual seasonings. Okay, but we need more than just seasonings. How about some steaks? Heath asked. Cordetta shook her head. Chicken? Shake. Pork? Shake. Catfish? Shake, shake, shake. Okay, then what do you want to put seasonings on? On quiches, Cordetta said. Daubs, pilafs, civilization generally. You want to season a pile of rice? A pilaf is not just a pile of rice. Were you born in a hovel? As a matter of fact, I was. Almost. A thatched house in a little village called Willowbrook. Willowbrook? Never heard of it. I bet it's not even on a map. The look Heath gave her then could have frozen a fresh kettle of tea. No, it isn't. Well, that was awkward. Cordetta changed the subject. Okay. Anywho, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. See, I have my cappuccino in the morning with cinnamon, and then wait to eat breakfast because I'm not hungry yet. But then I have my salad with greens, tomatoes, and carrots, of course. Do you know what I mean? The look on Heath's face would not have known what a dog was if it bit his lower lip off. Cordetta forged on. And it'll need smoked perch. You like perch, don't you? And the dressing on the side, so we can add just the right amount. And at the end of the day, Cordetta, this is all a load of just a sweet little treat. One a day, Heath. I feel like you're implying something, but too simple to keep track of all the things we steal, are we? Heath's eyes exploded in diameter. He grabbed her shoulders right there in the middle of the crowd and threw her sideways into a largish man standing nearby. Bouncing off him, Cordetta landed on the hard cobblestones. She shrieked in protest and looked around for help, but no one in the crowd was so much as looking at her. Heath had even torn her, Rosalie's, dress, the absolute scoundrel. The fabric was split in a line all the way up her skirt on the right side. Actually, how had he done that? She thought. He grabbed her shoulder, and it looked a lot more cut than torn. There was ruckus all around her, but no one seemed interested in helping her. They were all too busy backing away while staring at... Wait, what? A disheveled man was swinging a meat cleaver at Heath in vicious two-handed swipes. Heath was deftly parrying each swing with a flash of his blade. Cordetta hadn't even seen him draw it. Such was the fury of the butcher's assault that the steel of the two blades seemed to scream with every clash. His blade a whirling gray blur, Heath's eyes had lost none of the fire that had kindled in them when he tossed Cordetta aside. In fact, he was almost scarier than the other man, who, Cordetta now realized, had been the one who was trying to do her harm. Steel clanged against steel 1, 2, 3 times until Heath managed to strike the man's wrist with the flat of his sword. As the cleaver tumbled out of the man's nerveless hand, Heath kicked the man's leg out from under him and slammed him to the stones. The man swore incoherently at Heath, eyes crazed. With a shock that went all the way to her bones, Cordetta recognized him as the butcher who'd sold them the platy. A woman ran up carrying a bucket and dumped water on the butcher's face. He sputtered, spasmed, and went still. His eyes flicked around in terror as though seeing things that weren't there, but all the fight had gone out of him. The crowd parted to admit 4 armed guards who ordered Heath off the butcher before each taking a limb and carrying the man away without a second glance backward. And like that, it was over. The crowd around them went back to their shopping and sightseeing. A young woman threw a garland of flowers around Heath's neck, and then even she was gone, taking the last wispy dregs of the moment with her. Heath's eyes darted around at the retreating crowd before settling on the direction in which the guards had dragged off the butcher. Heath? Cordetta asked. What just... She'd have to wait for her stomach to climb back down out of her throat before she could manage any more. You're safe now, Cordetta, Heath said. Though his arm quested out to pat her shoulder, his gaze remained elsewhere. That's what matters. He wasn't after you. He was after me. You were just in the way. But what was that? Cordetta protested. Why did everyone act like it was so normal? An old man passing by coughed loudly. Because it is, he told them over his shoulder. Don't worry, though. It doesn't happen more than once a day. That got Heath's attention. What's causing it? Heath demanded of the man's retreating back. Is it the seep? Before either of them could ask further, the man was gone inside a nearby tavern. Heath stared at the door as though of a mind to barge right on in, but then, at a second glance back toward Cordetta, standing all alone in the street, he softened. So Cordetta, Heath waved his hands about, all these fancy culinary trifles, how many of them do you, personally, know how to make? Cordetta sighed. Cappuccino. How many do you, personally, know how to make? Best I can do is pancakes. Syrup on the side, so I, or you, or whoever, can add just the right amount. He smiled apologetically. The thing about food is, it's just fuel. It was useless. Heath probably hadn't even heard of a chocolatier's, unless he'd robbed one. Cordetta turned away to peruse the selections of a cluster of spice merchants. She needed a promise of something nice to calm her nerves, and one in particular was offering a spice blend that set Cordetta's mouth salivating. He was resting a hand on his head and looking around. Regretfully, I cannot give you the recipe, the merchant said, observing Cordetta's efforts to sense out each individual ingredient. Family secret. I can, however, sell you a jar for 30 guilders. 25, Cordetta countered. The merchant squinted at her, then at the festival decorations, then nodded. Very well. Oh, and I brought my husband, so 20. The merchant glared at her. Heath, coming up behind her, glared right back at him. Is there a problem, honey? Aren't you just perfect for each other? The merchant grumbled. We'll take all 6. Here. Cordetta held out the money. Heath's eyes widened. Now hold on there, honey. We're not made of... The merchant practically snatched the money out of her hand. Pleasure doing business, the merchant said. With the spices in hand, Cordetta allowed Heath to lead her further down the street. Such a generous princess, he whispered into her ear. She looked up at him. After all, you surely knew you could have had that for 15. He leaned in and grinned still wider. Surely. Don't be absurd, Cordetta replied. No merchant in the land could take such a loss. I tell you that man could not have afforded to refuse 15. How do you know? Heath glanced over her shoulder, then at her. Did you notice, as you approached, how he carried his hands? Cordetta was not one to take such questions from thieves, and so she said nothing. He kept pulling his hand through his hair. He was anxious, deeply anxious, and a merchant only gets that anxious if he's desperate for some cash flow. Heath chuckled as Cordetta turned to look. Don't look now, he's got nothing to be anxious about anymore, thanks to you. Indeed, the merchant was humming, almost dancing. For a moment, Cordetta wondered if she couldn't just be happy for him and the other merchants. But Heath had this self-satisfied look on his face. It simply wouldn't do. Cordetta pointed to another merchant, a purveyor of produce. What about that one? She asked. That one, not giving away much, but she looks relaxed. She knows she'll sell all those fruits today. Well, I've a hankering for apples, Cordetta replied, but only if they can be bought cheap. Cheaper than you probably can manage, to be honest. Heath made a noise in his throat and walked away. Cheap? He said, his voice trailing off. I can get it cheap. While Heath did his thing, Cordetta watched the festival happenings around her. This wasn't Guildmere's main market square. That was on the north side. But it was a fine and spacious enough square and filled with cheer. The fountain was sprinkled with rose and dahlia, and children chased the stretching shadows of the merchant towers with their pink and green chalksticks. Poets wandered about extolling the virtues of love and lust alike, although, being poets, they much tended toward the former. Here, Heath said after a poet walked past her opining the similarity between new loves and new dahlias. A bushel of apples, a sack of flour, and a slab of salted pork. Just 9 guilders. He tossed her a smile along with the apple she'd asked for. Oh, Heath, Cordetta cooed before tossing the apple back. Did you really pay so much for it? I don't think I have any appetite anymore. She wasn't giving anything away, Heath said, biting into the apple. It's a fair price where I come from. Did she cast a glamour on you or something? They had a massive bumper crop across the entire region of Trenta. She's got to sell. In a week, there'll hardly be anywhere left to store the surplus. Thus, no demand. Don't they know about commodity margins where you come from? You know, we still have to buy all the seepstone we'll need, right? Heath laid a hand on Cordetta's arm and smiled thinly. But you want your apples? I'll get your apples. For free. He turned her toward a modest stall, staffed by a peasant girl, and raised his eyebrows at her. No stealing, Cordetta hissed. Heath leaned close. What kind of man do you think I am? Cordetta was no longer sure. Heath strode over to the stall, planted one elbow on the counter, and started negotiating in a hushed, casual tone. Cordetta would have paid good money to know what he was saying, but there was no way she would deign to actually eavesdrop. Whatever Heath was saying, it had got the girl smiling and even blushing a little. She was touching her hair, too, with a nervous energy Cordetta had a mind to call objectionable. Heath was making lazy hand motions while the girl's eyes started getting bigger and bigger. Then, giggling, she put 3 apples in his hands without him handing over a single copper. Cordetta decided this had gone far enough. All right, now see here, she demanded, striding over. Just what kind of con do you think you're trying to... Heath tossed one of the apples high into the air, then another fast after it, then the last, just as the first came back down. Catching it, he threw it up again, and like that, he was juggling as deftly as any court performer. I told you I could, didn't I? He said to the peasant girl. The peasant girl clapped and squealed and told him if he kept it up for a whole minute, he could have all 3 on the house. Not only did Heath demonstrate an ability to do just that, he could smirk at Cordetta at the same time. Cordetta stomped away to the nearest textile merchant in disgust. Do you see that man? No decency. She began turning over shirts on the counter, determinedly not looking at him. "Honey, you gonna buy something?" the merchant inquired. Cordetta looked over the various homespun textiles while the peasant girl finished her count to 60. "What, these? Why, I itch just looking at them." The merchant rolled her eyes and waved her nastily away. "Well, wasn't that fun?" Heath held out one of his aptly winnings for Cordetta to eat. Cordetta was spared the indignity of responding by the advent of a small hand tugging on the hem of her dress. Cordetta looked down to see a little girl of 5 or 6 whose blonde curls were escaping tied ribbons on either side of her round face. "Excuse me, pretty lady. You're looking for spices? My uncle sells those." "More spices? Perhaps later," Heath told her. "Right now we're—" "Oh, well, Mama sells roses and does hair and makes dresses too. It's a festival thing. Come on." She grabbed Cordetta's hands and pulled her along. Heath watched her go moments before someone tapped him on the shoulder. The combination salon, flower, and dress shop was only 30 or so feet away. Cordetta soon found herself planted in a comfortable chair and fussed over by soothing hands. A vase full of roses appeared as if by magic at a side table, and a selection of summery dresses rolled into view before her. A canny choice to offer those first, Cordetta thought. Fall would be here soon enough. "So, dear," a kindly woman, presumably the girl's mother, said, "were you looking for the traditional festival look? When in Guildmere?" "Sure." The woman busied herself collecting pink and green ribbons off a nearby mirror. She seemed somewhat quiet for a hairdresser. However, the girl soon appeared to fill the silence. "I'm Lily. That's Mama," she said. "Did you see the dresses?" "Oh, yes, they're very pretty. I bet this green one would make you look like a princess." Cordetta's first instinct was to retort that it would make Rosalie look like a princess. However, no one here knew about that, and Cordetta wanted to keep it that way, and also she'd really rather not sound like an insecure twit. Besides, the dress was very well made. Neat lines, even stitching, nicely nipped in at the waist. The mint green coloring was so crisp, it made her feel refreshed just to look at it. "Another lady was in here before," Lily confided. "She was looking at this too. She said the sleeves were too short. She wanted long sleeves. I tried to measure her arm, but she wouldn't let me touch it." "It's very pretty," Cordetta replied. "And you're so good to be such a helper to your mama. Do you have a sweetheart? I bet he's really tall and strong and always brings you flowers." 2 out of 3, Cordetta thought with a pouty look toward the vase of roses, before remembering Heath was about the farthest thing from being her sweetheart. There was that date, of course, but she hadn't technically agreed to it. Still, the simpering old lady had seemed such a dear, and it did give her a pang, but then again, no. She had more than enough men standing between her and the Inventors Guild right now. "Yes, I think I would like that dress." "Marvelous!" Lily exclaimed. She jumped and clapped, making her pigtails bounce like little blonde tassels. "Uncle says sales are important, especially now." "Lily," Mama reproached. Her voice was low, like it didn't trust itself to be any louder. "Hush now. Measure the nice lady for her new dress." "Sorry, Mama," Lily said quickly, before returning back to Cordetta. "Mama says I'm not supposed to talk about that. Ever since Papa—" "Lily, hush!" Cordetta was somewhat relieved to finally pay for her dress and her hair. She felt that the green and pink ribbons threaded throughout her updo went particularly well with the dress. Reading between the lines, something had happened to Papa, something that had been happening a lot lately in Guildmere, and had people a little on edge. Details had not been forthcoming, and Cordetta had not pried. Cordetta wasn't quite sure how he knew, but she found Heath standing outside the shop, watching a pair of jugglers in the street, most likely getting ideas for how to improve his hidden talent. She approached him, intending to surprise him, but it was he who surprised her, turning around to reveal a bouquet of fresh pink roses in his hand. He smiled broadly and held them out to her. "Nice dress, pretty hair, I won't ask the price." That was good because the price was considerably more than the spices, but it also made Cordetta suspicious. Only one thing could make Heath so genuinely pleased with himself. He must know a secret. "You're looking so fine, in fact, that I'd like to treat my princess wife to dinner." That did it. He definitely knew something, but it was probably good news. Cordetta blushed and smiled and accepted her bouquet, holding it up to her nose and taking in the sublimely perfumed scent. Heath extended his arm and she took it. "We should be off now, though. I have a reservation for 6 o'clock, and it's 5:45. "Really?" Cordetta asked. "You do?" Heath flashed her a smile as proud as a king's. "The 2 Lakes. I hear it's the best spot in town."